Hey guys, what is going on? Just gonna do a little settings video. We've had some changes recently to Gamma, some updates, and I've had it requested a bunch of times. I usually go through my settings at the beginning of every series or playthrough, but this is gonna be a more dedicated video for the settings. That way I can just reference it when people ask for my settings. So anyway, right now I'm in Dead City, which is arguably a kind of tough place to run. My frames are up in the top right. It's very small, sorry about that. It's just the Reshade frame counter. We have about 75 frames looking out over here, about 60 frames when looking at the actual base. So let's go ahead and just go into settings. So for the basic settings, DirectX 11 is what I always run on and put it on borderless. I don't think it matters if you do full screen or borderless, but I like borderless so that it's easier to alt tab. And then for advanced, got headlamps on, FPS limiters at 0, VSyncs off obviously. The world rendering distances. These to me don't affect frames too much, but this is where I keep mine. And the distant shadow culling you definitely want on because this will sort of get rid of shadows that are behind, you know, walls because you can't see them anyway. And so why render them? It just hurts your frame. So this will actually help your frame rate. So I'd always leave that on. Rendering detail is pretty much, or rendering quality is pretty much all the way maxed out on these first 4 options. The anti-aliasing is off, and I'll explain this later because I do have anti-aliasing, but you don't need it on right here. SMAA is also off, and I have the detail bump, steep parallax, and tessellation all turned on. These to me do not really affect your frames too poorly at all, and they do make the game just look a little bit better, especially tessellation. I'm a big fan of that. Makes the ground textures look a bit more 3D. Okay, moving on to grass. Everybody knows if you played Stalker, Anomaly, that the grass density is what wrecks everybody's frames. And if you really want to get better frame rate and you don't really care about how bad the grass looks, you can just tank this first setting down and you will gain some pretty good frame rate. But if you want the grass and you want, because it looks good and you want it there probably, just don't have it much higher than about 70% and you will still get acceptable frame rate. But this is what's going to really limit you, unfortunately. The rendering distance for grass, there's really no reason to have it much higher than about 130. And for the size, I keep mine all the way low. It looks really cool when it's up high. For grass size, it's kind of like how tall the grass is, but stalkers can, unless you have the mod to remove this mechanic, but stalkers will shoot at you through grass. So I like having a little bit more visibility at the cost of smaller blades of grass. Anyway, grass shadows is also turned off because this is now done in the new SSS settings. So you don't need to have grass shadows on through the anomaly settings. Okay, moving on to lighting. So distance 0.5. I've never really messed with these first two. 0.5 and 1 for distance and quality. Actor shadows on. Don't mess with the gloss factor. Sun shadows are on. Sun shadow quality is medium. After this, you get diminishing returns. So it looks pretty good with medium. Doesn't kill your frames. I use volumetric for sun rays. I think it looks better than screen space. This one's a bit more of a preference. I do think you'd get better frames with screen space, but it's up to you. You could test both. Sun ray quality for volumetric I have on high. The intensity, this is how you actually customize how the sun rays look. I like them set here. So base intensity 0 and the main intensity 0.75. And then your SSAO method is going to be SSDO if you have a NVIDIA card. You'd have to look it up, but because don't quote me on it, but I think HBAO would be better for different graphics card, AMD or whatever. SSAO quality is going to be set to high. Volumetric light is on. And then for effects, I have pretty much all these on because they don't hurt your frames and they all make the game look quite a bit better. Excluding motion blur, nobody likes that shit. That is pretty much all for like the main, like the majority of the settings. But bear with me, if you go down to mod configuration menu, you're going to want to find SSS settings. And in here we have a lot of different options. This is the mod that adds in waving, grass, wind, better rain effects. This is where the wetness, if you want to customize how wet things look, the gloss factor, you can do it in here. You just don't want to mess with it in the actual anomaly settings. This is where you can also enable or disable the interactive grass, the pseudo giant and burr shockwave effects, which I think will tank frames, but they're small animations that don't happen constantly, so they look really cool. I leave them on. You have a lot. I mean, honestly, I'd recommend you just go through these and look at these because you can really change up the game quite a bit with these settings. But the most important things to change would be your shadow cascades. This is going to be where you do your grass shadows. They look amazing. If you put it on low, that is like the anomaly default for grass shadows. I have mine on high. Really haven't noticed a hit to performance that's very noticeable. So like it's definitely worth having, and it looks really, really good. For shadows in light, I haven't really changed much on here except for max shadow resolution. I put on 2048. It's just one step above the vanilla shadows at 1536. So that is an option. I like it. Shadows just look a little bit better. It's honestly not that noticeable. That is pretty much all for the actual in-game settings. You do also have all your depth of field, peripheral blurs, and all of those things that Gamma has added. They look really good, but if you want to, get rid of certain ones, like you don't want reloading depth of field or you don't want PDA depth of field, you can turn those off here. And then you also have like the wind settings, which this deals with like the swaying of grass and trees, which looks cool. I'll leave them all default because I think it looks pretty good that way. And then if you have Reshade installed, you want to hit the home key. That's going to bring up your Reshade menu. In here, it should already be checked if you have the latest update and you haven't added in your own custom Reshade config. This immersive anti-aliasing is SMAA that, judging by the description of this, it does say it delivers twice the performance of the original anti-aliasing, and it doesn't use the built-in anomaly anti-aliasing settings. It's definitely gonna do better for anti-aliasing for you. It's not gonna hurt your frames very bad. And if you're familiar with a lot of in-game, video game settings, you can go through here, customize all kinds of stuff, and create your own profile. I don't typically do that, but depending on your setup, it might be worth doing. As far as my system specs go, for reference, I have a 2080, nothing special, 8 gigs of V. Am I retarded? And my system specs for reference, I have a 2080 graphics card, CPU is a Intel 9700K. I've got 32 gigs of RAM. It's honestly a pretty mid-tier setup, and I get decent frames on here. And for those of you that got the update as soon as it came out, there were a lot of bugs with crashing and stuff. I think they've already fixed that though. And just always pay attention to the Gamma announcements page and also the Gamma announcements channel in my Discord. So the official Gamma Discord announcements and mine. Always pay attention to that and keep on the lookout for new updates and changes because Grok will post things in there all the time. Anytime there's any changes made or when bugs are fixed, and you can be sure that, like, in my experience playing this game, I've played it quite a bit. Every time there's been a annoying issue or a problem with performance, they are pretty good at fixing it pretty quickly. So they are always improving it. So if your game doesn't run good now, you can always hope for the future. I do hope that this helped some of you guys. That is pretty much all I wanted to do for this video. It's just a settings video, and I'm gonna go record the next episode on my UNISG run. So I hope you have a good day. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you later.